I got involved to start with because of Max and Charlie. Max and Charlie are my two grandchildren. And they're both on the spectrum, and they're both lucky enough to live in Missouri. And my gosh, a Kansas legislator saying that somebody's lucky enough to live in Missouri. But you know what? That's part of the sad story right now. And but it's a positive too, because Missouri took the step that we need to take and moved forward and passed a bill that went into effect January 1st of this year that is far better than anything that Kansas has at this point. You've heard what we've had, and I was very, very fortunate to be able to have the kind of support from Mike Wassemer and others who came forward and said, look, we've got to do something, but we haven't been able to get it through. I was also lucky enough to have support from a lot of legislators who said, well, you know, if you're really interested in this, let's look at it. And there is a process in Kansas that is somewhat tedious in going through this test track. But that's what we got passed last year, and that's the proverbial foot in the door. We became what I call a light green state. And I got that term from Lori Unum. And Dan, thank you for being here. I really appreciate you being here. The Unum family is one of those families where there is no such thing as a better half. They're both great. One's a little better looking than the other. I'm not going to say which one. But they both have just done a yeoman's share across this country of getting things done, with 24 states now that are supportive. Now, why is that important to Kansas? I'll tell you why. Because that's going to give me more ammunition this year than I've had before. I can go to my colleagues and say, okay, you want to have a test track that requires us to have some sampling within the state employee plan, which has about 120 children. Well, look at 24 states that have a lot more evidence and a lot more information, a lot more effort that has gone into looking at the need and supporting it. We don't need a test track in Kansas with 120 to prove the need is there. I can attest as one person with two children that are very dear to me, I've seen what ABA therapy does. I'm kind of preaching to the choir, but I'll tell you what, it does my heart really good when I go visit Max and Charlie and I see these two little guys that started ABA therapy when they were 3 years old, and now they put on their backpacks and they go out the front door and they walk the 2 blocks down the street to school in kindergarten. Now they have assistance and they have help, but they're both communicative, they're both able to go down the street, they're both able to be involved in a mainstream kind of class, and they're doing great. But they wouldn't be there if it wasn't for the ABA therapy that they got at an early enough age. One of my biggest concerns right now that I'm telling my colleagues in the Senate and in the House is that we can't wait until 2014 to have this implemented. Why? Because of all the Max and Charlies and Kates who are in that block of time right now where they need to have the ABA therapy. We can't let them wait until 2014. It may be too late. So, having said that, where are we? Thanks to Mike Wassemer and thanks to several other folks that are working with us, we have a bill that looks a lot like the Missouri bill. I've got a copy of it right here. There are some issues that are going to be interesting debates. Lori Unum provided us with some wording that she thought would help us from a national standpoint and help fend off some arguments that some folks that are opposed to it might have, dealing with the national benefits issues. And that's in the bill. But One big argument I can make to these Kansas legislators is that we don't want to be behind the Missouri legislature. And that makes a difference. But if we can tell them that the providers are moving across the state line because they can treat Missouri children under that program, but they can't treat Kansas children on our side of the line because we don't have the insurance coverage. That will make a difference. And it is making a difference to the one-on-one that I'm talking to now. Mike Keegirl, who is a representative from southern part of the county here, chairs a children and families committee that has been formed in the House. He's very interested in taking this bill and starting it right now. I do not care which side of the building it starts on. I know that it's going to come through our efforts on the Senate side if he gets it started over there. If we do it on our side, it's going to be in the FI&I committee, chaired by Ruth Teichman. I think we can get this passed, largely because Missouri did it first, and because we've already got the foot in the door with the test track. So I'm optimistic. 2011, I think, is going to be a good year. I think we're going to have this bill considered strongly, and I think we'll be able to move it forward. I think the fact that it's similar to Missouri is going to, I can also make the argument we don't want everybody moving across the state line. We'd like to keep them here. There are a lot of people in Johnson County, Wyandotte County, and those border counties that we call them, where a lot of those children are, and they're not on the state plan. I think that there are a lot of representatives and senators who are beginning to see that they have constituents who don't think it's fair that their children have to wait, while state employees in the state plan are under that plan. Now, what can you do to help me? Call your representatives and your senators and tell them how you feel. Get your friends to call them, because believe me, when they start hearing from people that it makes a difference to, and they start seeing that there are people that in fact have talked about moving not only their families but their businesses across the state line, that's an economic development issue. And I think we have to consider every possible thing that we can. Fight the alligators with maybe other alligators, but we're going to do it. So my office door is always open. I'm always open to suggestions as to how we might do it better. Like I said, I'm not an expert. I do want to tell you one thing, a little lesson on legislation. If you haven't been to your legislator's office or followed a legislator around a little bit, you ought to go do it. A lot of people think that they just spend their time, socializing and drinking or patting each other on the back or whatnot. Mike's followed me around, and I will tell you that when we have so little time on any one issue, it helps a lot when we have people who know what's going on make an appointment and come and see us. To give you an example, I had to miss a committee today that I serve on, but I had 6 people in my office who were so concerned about the education system in Shawnee Mission, which is my district, and it was more important that I hear from them as to what their concern is than maybe miss a few things in an hour-long presentation at a committee. When I have a committee meeting, I chair the Judiciary Committee. My responsibilities there, I have more bills right now than any other committee on either side. I have 25 bills that have been presented to my committee already, and we just started. I'm also chairing the Redistricting Committee for the Senate. That's going to be a real fun thing. I'm going to have a lot of friends halfway through the forest. I'm on Education Committee, and I'm on the Federal and State Affairs Committee. Those are every day. And in between, we meet constituents. My Judiciary Committee has only 1 hour a day, 5 days a week. Now, you've been here for an hour and a half listening to this group talk. Picture yourself as a legislator who knows nothing about your particular issue. And they're sitting there and they're listening to 2 or 3 bills in that 1 hour. And if they have heard some of the things that you've heard, and no offense to any of you, these are technocrats on a lot of things. They know the technical aspects. Look at your legislators' faces when they're sitting there listening to some of those things. I call it the glaze effect. They're people too, but if they know nothing about the issue and they're listening for 15 or 20 minutes and that's all they get besides maybe a phone call from you, this is technical stuff. So educate them, educate them, educate them, and when all else fails, feed them.